Hello folks, my name is Colt. I'm an interpreter here at the Continental Army Encampment at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown, and for this video we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally, with our two museums, we have at Jamestown Settlement we focus more on what life was like in the 17th century when the English first came over here to Virginia, and here at Yorktown we focus more on the 18th century, which is when the American Revolution was going on and when the siege of Yorktown was taking place. But for this video, we're actually going to focus on what life was like at Jamestown in the 18th century after the capital moved away. Now, for nearly 100 years after the English first arrived to Virginia in 1607, Jamestown was regarded as the capital and the principal settlement of the colony. Yes, the English soon moved off of the island to other lands and other settlements sprung up, but Jamestown was regarded as the seat of government. Now, Jamestown's history as Virginia's capital, however, was anything but peaceful. The State House at Jamestown burned down on multiple different occasions, and unfortunately on October 20th, 1698, a fire broke out again and consumed the State House and the jail on Jamestown Island. The State House was still in a state of disrepair the following year in 1699 when a group of college students from William and Mary actually petitioned the General Assembly to move the capital to Middle Plantation. Of course, Middle Plantation was the city or the town where the college was located. The General Assembly soon after that passed an act entitled, and I quote, "An act directing the building the Capitol and the city of Williamsburg." Middle Plantation was going to be renamed Williamsburg in honor of His Majesty King William III, and Jamestown would no longer serve as the seat of government. Relocating the capital to Williamsburg irrevocably changed the course of Jamestown's history. Its importance as an urban center diminished almost immediately, and during much of the 18th century, the bulk of the island's acreage became split between two large and prominent plantations, one belonging to the descendants of William Sherwood, and the other to those of Edward Travis. Over time, the southern and western portions of the island became consolidated under what was known as the Ambler Plantation, and the northern and eastern portions of the island remained in the Travis family for multiple generations. Although the General Assembly voted to move the capital in 1699, the change was not immediate. The Assembly continued to meet at Jamestown for some time, and in 1706, the Assembly even voted to allow James City County's justices to salvage bricks from the old State House to use those to build a new county courthouse at Jamestown. So some government functions continued on the island for some time. But by about 1716, when the Reverend John Fontaine visited Jamestown, he said that, and I quote, "Only a small rampart with embrasures remained, which was deserted and gone to ruin, plus a church, a courthouse, 3 or 4 brick houses that were somewhat deteriorated." So, although no longer Virginia's capital city and no longer James City County's seat, Jamestown was in a state of decline, but there were still some people living on the island and still some government activity.
Jamestown, Virginia was seen as a place of refuge for many. During the 1747 smallpox epidemic in Williamsburg, James City County's justices held court in Jamestown. Throughout much of the 18th century, ferries continued to operate from Jamestown across the James River to places like Swan Point in Surry County. Time and tide, however, were taking their toll on the island. Although it was called Jamestown Island, at this time it was technically an isthmus, but the ferry road and the small strip of land connecting it to the mainland was beginning to erode. In 1748, the locals complained to Richard Ambler, claiming that as the landowner who operated the ferry, he should either pay to repair the causeway or lose his right to operate it. Ambler protested, and because of his influence, the ferry continued to run from the island.
Well, the weather continued to hasten events on Jamestown Island as the years went by. Hampton Roads was struck by a hurricane in 1769, which no doubt did further damage to the ferry road. 2 months later, James City County's justices and the local freeholders petitioned the General Assembly to relieve them of the burden of maintaining the causeway that provided access to the Jamestown ferry. In 1779, the ferry's location officially moved from the island to the mainland, where there is still an active ferry service from James City County to Surry County that runs to this day. Now, with the onset of the American Revolution, there was a renewed interest in Jamestown Island for its strategic value along the James River. Virginia forces, Continental forces, and British forces each occupied the island at various points. There were various fortifications built on the island as well. Captain Edward Travis used the island as a staging area for naval vessels under his command, and even captured British vessels were sold on the island during the conflict. In 1781, though, once the British troops departed, the Chevalier d'Ancteville said that he found, and I quote, burned debris, tombs opened, other beautiful monuments broken to pieces, and a temple partly knocked down. He also claimed that the houses still existing breathed a cadaverous odor and enclosed cadavers, and that all means of devastation had been employed to the city and to the countryside. Unfortunately, the American Revolution brought further damage to the old capital city, and by the war's end, Jamestown was little more than a shadow of its former self. Now, for many people in Virginia, the period after the American Revolution was a period of decline. Real estate and personal property tax rolls suggest that in the 1780s and 1790s, the fortunes of Champion Travis and many other James City County planters fell on hard times. The quantity of the livestock and the slaves they owned decreased markedly. They, like many other supporters of the American Revolution, probably found themselves deeply in debt at a time when the nation's new economy was relatively weak. The ferries still ran, but few people continued to live on the island. By 1799, John Ambler Jr. resolved to only spend his winter months at Jamestown, and the Travis family holdings continued to deteriorate. By the beginning of the 19th century, Jamestown had become a symbol of Virginia's past, but very soon the island would once again be completely uninhabited. John Henry Strobia, a steamboat passenger who visited Jamestown Island in 1817, remarked that there were, and I quote, a few traces of its ancient importance. He said that 2 or 3 old houses, the ruins of an old steeple, a churchyard, and faint marks of rude fortifications are now the only memorials of its former inhabitants. What was once a vibrant capital city had been all but abandoned. In 1818, nearly a decade after Champion Travis's death, his property had descended to his son Samuel, but by 1820 there were no buildings on the Travis property that the county assessor deemed taxable. The first permanent English settlement in America was now completely depopulated. It was a place of many firsts in American history, and throughout the 18th century, unfortunately, Jamestown Island's story was a story of decline.